Here we go. Hello?
Hello.
Hello, welcome to the stream.
Hi, thanks so much.
All right. Is there anything I should know about the game before getting started?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Do you have a preferred username or alias?
I just go by Alice.
Okay, excellent. So I can go ahead and get started with our first question here, which is how did you decide on what you were going to make for the jam?
Sure. So, for this jam, this is my first time teaming up with my new partner. He is a designer, illustrator, and general artist. He did all of the 3D models, and kind of did art direction. And so at the beginning, when the jam theme was released, we threw out a bunch of ideas essentially. And I think there were two that we were interested in, but this was one that I was pretty adamant about. Adamant about because
Mm-hmm.
I've had it kind of kicking around in my head for a while now. A lot of similar things like this, and so I thought, oh, this is the perfect opportunity to use it. So it was kind of like this was an idea, or very close to an idea that I've had in my head for a really long time, and
Mm-hmm.
I just finally got the opportunity to whip it out.
Nice. So I'm assuming that I can kind of climb a little bit higher and reach out and grab something. And
Yep, pretty much.
just so everyone's aware, it's not that the stream is lagging. This is an intentionally low frame rate aesthetic,
Hmm.
uh, which looks really neat if you actually try it for yourself. So that is, you can do that with the link that I have pasted into the chat there. Let's see. Oh,
Yeah, I that's one of my the things about this game. I really love the aesthetic, but it really does not handle compression very well.
yeah.
Um, it can look kind of like a muddled mess on streams and videos sometimes.
So yeah, there's a lot of the dithering effect going on, and dithering is famously does not do so well on streams. So interesting. Let's grab another ladder. I feel like I made this a little too tall for myself to be able to jump, so I'm gonna try and get can't get on top of that fridge anymore. Well, hopefully my arms are long enough that I can reach out and grab something distant. Nice, I can grab things actually really far away. Well, I'm glad that the jam theme sort of worked so that
Hmm.
because if you've had this idea that you've wanted to make a game akin to this for a while, that
Hmm.
joined together seems like a perfect time.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm that it just happened to line up like that. But yeah, I've had this idea a lot. I have kind of a personal love for um, user created structures, especially structures that are non. I don't want to say not creative because like it is inherently a creative act that we do whenever we build something,
Mhm.
but structures that arise from mechanical necessities. So like buildings in like Fortnite, or if you've ever watched like Minecraft multiplayer where they're fighting each other, you
Mhm.
get a lot of these structures that build up, which don't make sense in like reality terms or visual terms, but they almost tell a story of how people used the tools they had to get from point A to point B, and you can almost see in the structure those concessions that people have to make due to like limitations of the tools or necessity of the situation. So one thing you'll see in some people's towers when they're playing this game is they'll have a tower going up, and then they'll have a little offshoot that goes to the side and comes back around because maybe they put down a fridge in the wrong spot, and they have to build a secondary little walkway so they can get on top of that fridge,
Oh yeah, as
and
I did
that kind of
immediately.
stuff. Yeah, and so that kind of stuff, I really love that stuff. I think it's really cool. It tells these really cool, like physical, viewable narratives.
Hmm.
And that I can't get enough of that stuff. So this jam theme was a dream come true for me.
Excellent. All right. Um, Boykala in the chat is asking, was the art inspired by Return of the Obra Dinn by Lucas Pope?
Lucas Pope is definitely one of the inspirations. I love Return of the Obra Dinn, and I think that is one of the Return of the Obra Dinn is probably one of the reasons I decided to go with the one bit aesthetic of just the two tone color.
Hmm.
Sometimes in like some of my other works, you'll see that I do the dithering, but rather than just two tones, I'll use like a palette of maybe 8 colors that I dither between. And I thought about doing that for this one, but it was a combination of Return of the Obra Dinn and that kind of aesthetic that I love. And as well, me and Roman both have a love of print animations. So animations which are made with physical printed objects that are scanned in. And so one of the goals with this was also to replicate like what a printed animation looks like. If you take any given screenshot of this game, it almost looks like a poorly Xeroxed, like picture. The Xerox kind of look was a lot greater when earlier on in the jam when we were using black and white as our two colors, but they were kind of really harsh on the eyes, so I went with something a little bit more mild, and I think it turned out pretty well.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like this is it's almost like a bit of a purpley dark blue, like navy blue,
Mm-hmm.
and then a just slightly sort of cream yellow. So you've got a kind
Mm-hmm.
of sort of complementary colors going on there. And
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely think it's much, as you said, easier on the eyes than just a straight black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I will just remind everyone in chat, please feel free to include your own questions, and I will continue to ask the ones that I have here. Um, so this was made in, is this made in Unity or whoop?
Yeah, this is made in Unity.
Okay,
The shader is custom written. I wrote it over the course of the jam. Um, uh, it mostly used just stuff I've learned over the course of like the last couple of years learning shaders. But everything else is pretty bog standard Unity stuff.
I sorry, I think I pressed escape to scroll down, and then that ended up breaking it because it I know
Oh yeah. So escape will close the game. That was something left over from a old reuse script I have that closed the game when you pressed escape.
I
All
see.
it does now is essentially crash it. So that yeah, that's a little my bad.
Sorry,
Um,
I'm very used
if
to pressing escape just to close out of um,
mhm.
full screen mode. That's okay. I didn't have the best tower going, so I'll go ahead and continue reconstructing it.
If
Uh,
you need to go, if you need to exit out, hitting the back button on your browser will close it without actually shutting it down.
okay.
Or at least it should,
How do I
unless it has
reclaim
changed stuff.
control of my mouse though?
Right click will put the mouse back in. At least, hopefully, as long
Uh,
as that's still working.
it doesn't seem to be, but I'll just try alt tapping instead. It's all right. I have everything open on 3 monitors that I need, so I should be all good. I will really only need the mouse cursor when I'm going to paste a link into chat or something.
Hmm.
Um, so no worries. We'll just keep going on. I realize there's some text along the top of the screen that I have been neglecting. Were you going for a sort of minimal narrative along with our quest to build the Tower of Babel here?
Yeah, so the game, spoiler warning, there is no real goal in the game,
Of course.
other than the original stated goal to just ascend, to go up.
Yeah.
Um, that is mostly on purpose. While it might have been a slight time constraint, not necessarily having an ending was part of the design from the beginning. And so the idea was essentially that like we have this narrative that is the objects themselves kind of talking to you as you build. And so we definitely put the text maybe in the wrong spot, and it's a little hard to read. A lot of people have commented that like they don't notice it until they're maybe like 10 items in or something that they start to notice the text appearing at the top.
Yeah, I think that like I was noticing it, but it's just because I guess most people are used to subtitles being along the bottom of the screen. So,
Hmm.
um, all right. So, what was your development process like for the game?
So development process on this one was a little weird because I actually spent like maybe the first 8 to 10 hours of the jam working entirely on the visuals. So I was writing shaders, I was setting up the system. So the entire game runs on three different ticks. So you've got your usual Unity update, which runs every frame, and that is the movement of the character and the movement of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else runs on two custom ticks, which run at 12 frames a second and 24 frames a second. Respectively to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that setting up that system and getting everything to work with that with like a consistent delta time and everything, that was the entire like my first day before I went to sleep was working on that system. So we actually didn't have any gameplay within that first day. Um, After that, um, the movement is actually a character controller that I made years ago and I've been tweaking on. So it's kind of like it's very similar to the Unity character controller,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not restricted to capsule colliders. Because capsule colliders are the bane of my existence, and I hate them all of the time in all situations. So
I
it
feel like there's
was
a story behind that.
there are quite a few stories behind that. Capsules are no bueno. But in general, we threw the character controller in, and then it was a lot of it was getting the grabbing and placing working correctly. All the while, Roman was mostly focusing on 3D models. Um, Unfortunately, there are a lot of 3D models he made that didn't make it into the game. I didn't leave enough time at the end for authoring. Each of the objects has a custom authoring that has to be done of aligning a rectangular hitbox correctly to the object or several, and
Mm-hmm.
then also including the orientation and the hand positions when the character is holding it. I didn't leave enough time for myself at the end for authoring those, so there's a few objects that didn't make it in. But, in the end, I think it turned out well, and we have a wide enough selection that pretty happy with what we got so far.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is quite an eclectic selection. Were you like, how did you come up with the objects for the game?
So the objects were kind of just a hodgepodge of items that we threw together. So we had a Notion board that we had, and on it we had a section that was just items that we could make, and we threw up everything. We basically only started with everyday items, quote unquote, was what the original design asked for.
Mm-hmm.
And then beyond that, once we had all the 3D models, it was mostly picking things that simultaneously I thought would make for interesting building blocks that have their own characteristics, as well as like visually distinct and visually interesting. Um, so yeah, what items actually made it into the game was kind of a combination of just things we had thought of and Roman thought he could 3D model in a quick amount of time, and then add on top of that just what I thought would make for interesting gameplay.
Sounds good. Um,
Oh, sorry, hold on, I've lost you for a second.
oh, no worries.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hello. Yep, I could hear you the whole time. One thing that you can perhaps try is just drop your frame rate of the stream if you have it open down to like 160p, so it's not hogging out of your bandwidth.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Um, one thing that I don't know. Tell me, did you consider the idea of having an object highlight if it was within the character's like grabbable range?
So I did. There were a lot of things that I thought, like having a reticle for where the arms will go, having like a more clear showing of where you can and can't place an item. However, what I've found in the games that I've made is that that kind of UI that gives very specific information about what is mechanically possible or not possible um, instills in the player a sense of like, oh, this is a thing that because I have the information on exact gameplay stuff, this is something I should be good at or that I can get good at. And I really wanted to avoid that. I really want to avoid this ever seeming like something that you need to compete in or you want to be good in. This is supposed to be just a personal experience, and those kind of UI things I avoided because I don't want to give that effect. Also, to in the chat, the question of are the shaders done in GLSL? The shaders are made with Amplify Shader Editor. I picked that up years ago, and I've been using it ever since. I believe it generates GLSL code, but I don't actually write the GLSL code myself. Amplify does that for me.
Ooh, somebody said we're past 11. Oh, we do hope that whoever keeps count is paid in full. I mean, is it 11 high or 11 total? Because I feel like there's more than 11 things here.
So it's a little bit iffy. The original design of the text was to be that you would get a dialogue every time you placed an item. That later changed to every time you place an item above a certain height limit that goes up with every item. The reason was that with the original design, you could just spam items on the ground and you would continually get text. And so I wanted to encourage that upward motion.
Right. Sounds good. All right. Can you recommend a particularly useful shortcut or a clever hack in the Unity engine that you think would be helpful for others to know?
Yeah. Is it okay if I list off a couple? Because they're
Of
all kind of
course.
connected.
Of course.
So, one is especially in game jams, don't feel bad about doing the thing you're totally not supposed to do. If there's something that you are never supposed to run every frame, but running it every frame will get it done right now and move you on to the next thing, run it every frame. The worst case is that you'll get low frame rates and you can go back in and fix it later. Don't be afraid to do the wrong thing and then make it the right thing if you need to. I guess that's more of a general game design tip or game programming tip. But yeah, don't be afraid to do it the wrong way, because if you always worry about what is the right thing to do, you will have beautiful code that doesn't run because there are no features. That would be like my first tip. My second tip is don't be afraid to let the engine do the math for you. So the scarf, if you spin around, you'll notice that the scarf, it trails behind you in an interesting way. I could have made that with entirely math of figuring out, okay, I'll make a spline curve or what have you. But instead of doing all that, there's just 3 different game objects that all rotate with you, and they each have a different, like they each have a delay to them, and then the second object is delayed off of the first one and the third object is delayed off of the fourth one. So I don't actually calculate positions or rotations or everything. I let Unity handle that all for me, and that's how it all rotates. And yeah, if you can solve a like a complex like vertex position or 3D math problem by just throwing a bunch of empty game objects all over and calculating distances between them and moving them relatively, that totally works. With the arms, instead of figuring out the exact rotation the arms need to be at when you throw them out, they just they use the Unity dot look at command and they look at and then they're like totally off, so every frame I am making them look at their target and then rotating them like 90 degrees on the X and 180 on the Y, or I think it's like -90 +90 for the left arm, and I just coded that in by hand. It's messy, no one going back will ever know why the code does that, but it works and it gets the job done. And I think like if you want to make something that you're proud of in a game jam, you got to cut corners and you got to do quote unquote the wrong thing. So empty game objects to do all of your 3D math is 100% my recommendation. It helps you with all sorts of things.
Yeah, I completely agree that you really, you can't argue with results, right? So even if it feels a little janky, even if it feels like it isn't best practice,
Mm-hmm.
this question actually used to be formatted as, "What is something you did in this project that you would never do in a production game?" And I feel like we've
Mm-hmm.
basically answered the spirit of that, even with the way that I've rewritten it.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like some of this, and to be honest, I this is the kind of stuff I would do in a production game. Um, if I were making a production game, I would do this stuff all over again, 100%. And
Hmm.
then if we weren't hitting performance targets, I'd
Then,
go back and fix it later,
yeah,
you know? Because it's
exactly.
totally possible that you shouldn't be doing a square root on update, right? You shouldn't be doing a square root every frame unless you can absolutely avoid it. But to be honest, if you're making a character controller, which you're only going to have one of because you just
Hmm.
have one main character, and you need to throw 3 or 4 square roots in there, CPUs today can handle it. The compiler is very smart. You're going to be fine. If you need to optimize, you can later, but chances are your optimizations are going to be somewhere else. So, yeah, there's a certain amount of like being afraid of messing things up that I think when you kind of go on this journey when you're first learning game dev, you have this beautiful golden age where you're learning all these things and you don't have a care in the world about what's the right way, or what you just have an idea in your head and you're trying to get it out. And
Hmm.
then as you learn more and you get more experienced, you're going to learn like more efficient ways of doing things, the right way to structure your classes, the right way to organize your files. And all of this is very helpful knowledge to have, but you can get into this slump where you stop making games and you start making perfect code bases. And I think the my advice is just to pull out the other end of that and try to find the middle ground where you're at least attempting to make things right, but don't sweat it because you will learn to sweat it, and that will honestly stifle your creativity.
Absolutely. I think that's really, really good, just all around solid advice. Because, yeah, I completely agree. I've definitely been in that situation where, especially in the context of a game jam, I will. The only difference is, like, if I know something's going to work, even if it's the quote unquote, like, non-performant way of
Mm-hmm.
doing it, then I'll do it. The only time that
Mm-hmm.
I will necessarily invest in doing it the right way is when I'm not sure if, like, okay, this is a hack and it might not work because it'll cause such and such problem down the line, and then I
Mm-hmm.
will go in and write the more rigorous code and make sure that the classes are properly parented and set up the inheritance structure and do all that
Mm-hmm.
important stuff. um but yeah, in general, like, as you said, it's more important to make the game, and then if you're not hitting the performance, then you can always optimize later.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was a that might be one of the best answers I've ever had to that question. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. This is a lot of fun.
Oh, for sure. And we do still have one more question here.
Mm-hmm.
And chat, I will remind you, if you have any questions, to please submit them. And yeah, Degrand, I completely agree. The spirit of a jam is to prototype new things. Yes. Um, do you have any plans for this game going forward, or you consider it complete?
So I definitely don't think it's complete. I would love to have more items. Just in general, I think a little bit more would be really nice. We've found that like there have been some absolute crowd favorites. The baguette is, it seems to be the one thing that everyone loves. No one can stop talking about it. Um, and so I think there are some more items we could add that could have that kind of very personal flair to them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are definitely UX considerations that I really want to fix. Um, the easiest one is going to be, I think, aiming and placing need to be on two different buttons. I've noticed there are a lot of people that, even with that beginning text, clicking and holding to preview isn't isn't intuitive. And I just didn't figure that out in the jam, and I'd love to fix that and make that more intuitive. Definitely the arm throwing, I think, could use a lot of work. Earlier, you mentioned like having a glow effect around items that are in range. I want to avoid that kind of obvious UI thing,
Mm-hmm.
but one idea I had was making it so that there's a bit of a steeper fall off on the fog at the far edges of your reaching range.
Mm-hmm.
And so subconsciously, you'll notice like objects in range will be a tad lighter than anything out of range, and it won't be a perfect gradient. And I think that will help with like that subconsciously knowing, oh, that item is or isn't in range.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think it's a really nice, subtle way of doing it. Look at my tower sort of slowly corkscrewing upwards.
So, fun fact, this is actually something I love to share because it's a fun little design lesson that I kind of learned on this and I want to share with other people. But that corkscrew shape is entirely intentional. I don't even have to look at the string right now, and I can promise you that it is corkscrewing in a clockwise direction.
It
Um,
is?
and the reason for that is I actually made it so you'll notice when you grab an object,
Mm-hmm.
it will hold a specific orientation. And
Yes.
it's the same orientation every time, except for a few items. So, like books have two different orientations, the baguette has two, the fridge only has one. And intentionally, I made a majority of those either point forwards or lean to the right. Um, the reason being, I wanted these kind of corkscrew towers that spiral up into the distance. If you made all of your items completely straight and forward,
Mm-hmm.
you'd get more of like a staircase. I didn't want. I wanted that kind of towering feeling where you have to look down to see what you've built.
Yeah.
And so part of that was making objects just tilt to the right, and
Mm-hmm.
people will by their nature want to, let's say I'm placing an item down, I'll want to stand on the object that I just placed and then look towards the end of that object and place my new object. And so if the majority of them curve to the right, you'll just naturally cause players to spiral. I think being really careful about not just from game design, don't just think about like, here are the rules, what arises from the rules, but think about like, what do people naturally want to do, and
Mm-hmm.
how can you tweak the things they're interacting with to kind of lead people in the direction you want them to go. If you wanted to in my game, you could build a perfectly straight like stairway into the sky, but you'd have to be fighting your natural instincts and kind of fighting the geometry a little bit to make that happen. And I'm pretty proud of that. I think it works really well, and I think the creations people have made and posted show that like I think that has had despite it being a completely invisible feature, I think it's one of the most important features to people taking a positive experience out of it.
Yeah, I accidentally fell back to the ground just so I figured, okay, well, let's take an opportunity to get a look up at it. So maybe this could be something else that if you are going to make a post jam version, maybe
Mhm.
doing some more occlusion on the characters so that you can like look
Mhm.
up through their eyes, because I think as much fun as it is to look down at what you've created, I think it's also a lot of fun to look up at it.
Mhm. Definitely, I want to make it so when you look up, the camera actually pulls up into the player's head.
Yeah.
And then also on objects, you'll notice that there is a dithering effect if they get too close to the camera.
Yes.
Um, Currently, that uses surface depth, which is great and all, but it does have kind of the negative downside that uh, you can clip into items. I'd
Hmm.
like to do more of like a Mario type effect where the entire object dithers as it gets closer. That's a bit more work and requires some uh, uh, coordination between the GPU and the CPU of calculating positions.
Hmm.
But that is definitely something I'm looking to add going forward.
All right, sounds good. And yeah, sorry, I only mentioned that as it was occurring to me. Um, the ground is asking if a baguette can ruin my game experience. I mean, I don't know if it was specifically the baguette that knocked me over. I think it nearly happened again. It might just be the orientation of this leaf. It seems to be kind of nudging me. Um, but yeah, I think it's like game design is so much about psychology. So I think it's really
Mhm.
neat that you were able to take advantage of this like um, subtle and natural inclination. Like there was a reason that I sort of had stayed paused near the top of my tower here for so long, holding that microwave, because I think
Mhm.
it like really clearly represents what you're talking about. Like it's sort of slightly tilted to the right, and it wouldn't have felt right to put it on the left side. It felt right to put it on the right
Mhm.
side of the plant up here. So yeah. Um, in so I really wish we were getting more questions from the chat. But I guess
Mhm.
I'll go ahead with wrapping things up here and ask: are there any other people or projects that you'd like to give a shout out to or promote?
Sure. Roman, my art and design buddy, he is just as much a part of this game as I am. I go check out his Instagram. It's linked in the description. If you just go to the game page and you click on his name, it'll take you to his description. My Twitter's on there too. If you want to give me a follow, I would love that. I'm going to attempt to be tweeting more going forwards. And then if you like the visual style and you want to see what other visual styles I'm capable of, I do have a game up on my page that is called Astral Ascent. Pretty proud of that game as well. There's a 2.0 update coming out fairly soon, so keep an eye on that if you want. And yeah, more games hopefully coming out from both me and Roman, and I look forward to what we're doing in the future.
Yes, as do I. So if you have any more games that you'd like to send my way, or if you just want to chat design at any point, I'd be more than happy to have you back on the stream at some point.
Sure, I'd love to. Hit me up anytime.
All right, sounds good.
All right, thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.